with Flaum, and she's got a great idea for one of my favorite things on earth, coloring. Yeah, so we're gonna color stamped images, right?
You know what? It's one of my favorite things to do. I love to color stamped images. Maybe I don't feel very creative. Maybe I have only a couple minutes. For whatever reason, I love to sit and color, and I love to have ways to use those images that I sit and color on my projects. So let's start. I'll show you some of my projects that I've got here. First of all, I've got this layout here where I colored and then cut out these flowers, and I had a lot of fun. And
what
I always
did you color with?
Have a lot of fun. That's just watercolor, and then I just blotted it with a paper towel to kind of mute the colors. And I love playing with color combinations and adding water, more and less water. I love to do all that kind of stuff because it lets me try techniques, and by working on just the stamped image on paper, I don't have to worry about if it's going to come out perfectly or not, because the worst thing that happens, it didn't work, and I just move on to try again. So down here I've got two cards that I want to be sure to show you. This first one with the butterflies, I stamped the butterfly just with dye ink onto the background, and then the butterfly that's cut out here, what I had been doing, I had been playing with coloring butterflies, and I really liked this one, so I built the whole card around it. And then when I was all done with making the card, I just took my sewing machine and just stitched it on there, so it's not adhered on there at all. The stitching is just holding that in place, and that also is watercolored. And now this third card, and we'll get to play with this stamp actually. This third one here with my bunny, I was playing with watercolor pencils and colored her in and cut her out, and you can see all the different accents that I've got going here with, I just kind of complemented the stamped image that I colored with papers.
I just love this idea so much, May, of the idea that it's low risk, meaning you're not stamping directly on any of your projects, you're stamping on a separate piece of paper.
Yes.
And then if it turns out well, you use it, and if it doesn't,
and if it doesn't, then it's scrap, or we color over it, or make it a layer in our journal, something else.
Do you have some stamping tips for using a wood block stamp?
Absolutely. With the wood block stamp, I just like to make sure I have a solid surface. I don't want it to be squishy. I don't want it to be something that doesn't have enough, like a thin plastic or something. That type of table is not going to work as well as, say, a nice sturdy table like this, or a wood table, or the floor. If I'm at a crop and the tables aren't so good, use the floor. And then we want to use an ink that's a permanent ink.
Why?
We want to use an ink that's a permanent ink that's not going to react with water, because when we go and we do our coloring, we want to make sure that the moisture from, whether it's a pen or watercolor or whatever, we want to make sure that the moisture from that does not react with our stamped image and blur it out. Unless that's the technique you were going for, in which case a dye ink or something that will react would be good.
Okay, so now you're gonna start coloring some bunnies, I know, with watercolor, and you're gonna give us some great watercolor tips.
Sure. Yeah, I've got a bunny here, and I've just got regular cardstock because I tend to, unless I absolutely know what I'm gonna do, I tend to save like the very expensive, heavy watercolor paper or mixed media paper for something that I really feel confident in. If I'm not feeling so confident, or I'm not so sure what colors I wanna mix or play with, then I just start with regular cardstock and see how it goes until I master a medium.
And I love the tip you told me, which is, you just said it, if you're not sure of the colors you wanna use. So you were saying that you often stamp the same image multiple times so that you can try out different colors and then see which one you like best. I think that's just so brilliant.
Yes, because especially when I've got little scraps of paper, or maybe I had been using some paper and then ended up not needing it all, or going a different direction, or maybe I stamped and it messed up, I'll just flip it over.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm doing is I'm using basically watercolor markers, which give you some of the look of watercolor, but without, with a little more control, I guess I'd say, if you're a control freak and you want to absolutely make sure that it works, or let's say you're somewhere where you don't have ready access to water, that's a nice way to do it because you don't have to think too hard. But of course, you know, you can also use gel pens, which are another of my favorite supplies on earth to use, because again, gel pens can get in like the little tiny detailed areas that you may have in a stamped image, and that's always a good idea, right?
Absolutely. Now, what if you have something, do your gel pens, or do you have something that works when, like, I've got this little gray bunny that I was liking, but he's now got red eyes?
That's where a white gel pen is so good, because you can see that right here, I can just color in the whites of the eyes, boom, it just pops, right? So much. And then of course you can even add, let's say my bunny has polka dots, because I like bunnies that have polka dots on their heads. Who just doesn't? Like that. I know, right? Super duper easy. So, and I think that's fun because too, you can go on top of watercolor you saw, you can go on top of markers. I mean, really you can use any of your favorite coloring mediums. But that's the fun thing is you and I can have the same stamp and we can create completely different looking things, okay? So now we're gonna cut this out. And of course you could use scissors if you wanted, you can, but we're gonna just pop it into our electronic cutter to make it super duper easy. So once I put it on the sticky mat and I just load it in, then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to scan in the design so that it will cut around it. Now, if I look at some of the finished bunnies that you have here, I can see that you actually left a margin, which is so great when you're hand cutting because obviously that makes it really easy. You don't have to be careful, you don't have to be perfect. It just sort of is, right?
Yeah, and you know, I did that for these guys because I have two ways. Either I get messy with my coloring and then cut exactly along the line so you can't see that I got messy and went over the lines. Or I do this where I leave a margin because it gives me that little white edge around it will really make it pop on my project.
And in my machine, I can do the exact same thing. I can add a margin to my cut, then I can go ahead and cut it out with the margin. So again, like so many other things, there are a lot of different ways to get the same results, okay? So while this is cutting, why don't you show me a little bit about how you popped that bunny onto the card?
Sure thing. So I'm gonna bring this right in here and let you see how the bunny, what I did is I took some foam adhesive and put it on the back because I actually literally wanted it to be popped up off of the card. And then what I did for this one, because it was soft pinks and a soft card, I just went ahead and found some things that I thought would complement it and really kind of bring it all together, but let that bunny stay the focus. And you can see how that leaving that margin on there really helps that image.
I think it's great. And look, I have my vibrant bunny, you have your soft watercolor bunny, so many options. I particularly love the little doily here, and I know you have a couple doily samples which you could easily cut with an electronic cutter or a punch. Great idea.